And I think if you can share, like, okay, you're the first person I'm being intimate with after
Yeah,
being with someone for 30 years. I mean, as a
that's
guy, would
intimacy in
you,
itself,
yeah,
right? I
I
mean,
mean,
that's
would,
like,
would, would you even
okay,
be
great.
turned off?
No, not at all. It's like,
No.
great, let's do this. Uh,
Did you push record?
Thank you so much for tuning into Second Act TV. Today I'm so happy to welcome back two of our favorite sexual health experts, Jim Griffith and Emily Liu. Thank you so much for joining me again.
We're so happy to be
yeah,
back.
hi Silke. It's great to be back talking with you again.
Well, we have some interesting conversations today. I should say that you are a intimacy and sex coaching team, and you specialize helping people like us in our second half of life rediscover sensuality. And of course, Emily, you are an author. You have two relationship books, one of which I have right here, Climax: Why Great Leaders Need Love Affairs, and we'll reference that throughout our interviews today. This conversation, the reason I wanted to have you back on at this time is because we've been getting lots of questions in our comments and some very personal emails that I get from women who are in their second act after 50, long marriage, starting over again. And they're very hesitant to date because of their lack of sexual experience. And I thought this is important to talk about because you're certainly not alone. As I said, there's lots of women
Right.
going through this and men, for other reasons. So let's talk about that. How do we start over again without feeling insecure?
Okay. Let me just preface this by saying this, that I was in a marriage for 30 years, and then I started dating at 54 and dated for a couple of years before I met Jim. So that question is like, oh, okay, I
Really
was
relevant.
in that kind of place. So the viewer is not alone. And frankly, for myself, it never really occurred to me, like, okay, I've been with one person, like, whoa, do I have enough experience? For me, I just went with the flow. Whatever wanted to happen, however he wanted to lead me, because I wanted to be led, as a feminine person that wants to follow in the relationship arena, romantic relationship arena. So I'll just go with the flow. And I didn't have any blocks per se,
And no agenda
and
and
no
yeah,
agenda,
right.
and just being present. So I just wanted to preface this discussion with where I'm coming from.
Well, let me preface it then too. Where I'm coming from, and I've disclosed this on many other segments. I too was in a 25-year marriage, and the last 10 of which were sexless,
Right.
and so this was a huge issue for me. Is how do we start over again? I can totally empathize. So I mean, so let's address that. Does your sexual history really matter?
Well, I think there's two things here that I want to point out. First is that you have to sort of distinguish which part of your sexual history you're talking about. I would make the distinction between your sexual experiences history and your sexual relationships history. And I think that the sexual experiences history actually is a really good thing for you to talk about, even early on in a dating process, to sort of share the things that you enjoy, the things that you don't enjoy, and sort of your openness to exploring new things to the extent that you might be. So I think that part of your history is really relevant as you go into a new relationship together, and it's a conversation that can really set the stage for how you want to establish boundaries. And those boundaries might evolve over time, but it's a way to feel safe as you approach having a sexual relationship.
Then you made an interesting point: the sexual experience and sexual relationships. And we talked off camera beforehand, and I said, sexual experience, I can see that. To me, I don't necessarily want to hear about sexual relationships. I have there's a part of me that has, as we talk
Right.
about our parts, that is insecure there. So let's distinguish between the two, because that can affect how the relationship progresses, right?
Yeah, and I think you're not alone. Certainly, that maybe most of your audience might feel the same way, that they don't really want to know the details. But there might be a part of your audience, and I'm certainly among them, that is perfectly comfortable learning, and hearing about, what really worked at a level of explicit detail in your previous relationships. What things really turned you on? I think that's kind of exciting for me personally to hear that kind of history. So I think we want to be, open to the idea as we approach, sort of a new dating relationship. And consider the fact that your partner may or may not be ready to talk about that. So I just think it's a matter of being sensitive.
And also being vulnerable, especially if let's say the woman, the first guy she dates, and she's feeling sexual attraction towards, like, oh, I think I could really get intimate with this guy. This is where a woman's vulnerability is so important, to say, look, I've been with the same person for 25 years, and the last 5 or 10 have been sexless. And
been
it
out
was
of the game for a long time.
Yeah,
right?
so this was basically a vanilla sexual relationship, and he didn't make me feel safe to explore different things. But in this new way of dating, I want to explore what the possibilities are. So it all depends on where the woman is in terms of her desire for exploration or not.
Yeah, and we shouldn't worry about measuring up.
No.
Yeah, I mean, this is a new adventure, right? And to enter it, into sort of hold hands and to sort of walk through that doorway into a new world of pleasure is a really exciting thing to do. But I think, as Emily was saying, it really requires a level of comfort and trust that is established in the course of having sort of intimate and vulnerable conversations. Those are conversations that help build that trust and establish the safety to be able to start exploring something as intimate as sexual relationships.
Yeah. And it's also about understanding your own insecurities. Are you going to feel insecure when you hear about how his ex was very adventurous sexually, or maybe they had polyamorous relationships, or went outside of the marriage, or whatever? It all depends on how you feel about yourself, and check in with yourself and let your partner know, there's a part of me that is insecure if I hear the details of your experiences.
Yeah, or just uncomfortable in general. It doesn't have to come from a place of insecurity. It could be,
some sort of religious upbringing where you can't.
Right. I just that really is something that I'm not comfortable talking about for whatever reason. It may not be my own personal security.
And also share what your goals are now that you are divorced and starting over. Is there something you would like to learn more about? How are you in a growth mindset where you want to learn new things about yourself? And so it's great to have that kind of intellectual sexual conversation before you actually get into bed, to see if you're aligned in that value. Because if he's somebody who's not going to explore certain things, I don't do this, okay, well, it's not going to be a match.
Yeah. And I think that, Jim, you either mentioned it or maybe in another conversation, but you said that, if you don't have a lot of experience, that can actually be a turn on.
Exactly. Right. So innocence in a woman is actually an attractive thing for a guy, right? Because I get to lead, I get to teach. For me, at least, I know that's an attractive thing. And I imagine that many guys would share that. They're not looking for somebody that necessarily has had a lot of sexual experience. That isn't even really a factor. It's the openness that matters. It's the willingness and the desire and the connection that really is what's important.
Yeah. Well, so how do we, as you say, forge a new sexual relationship? Can we go through some steps or tips that we can leave with our viewers?
Well, here's something that your female viewers may want to consider, and that is not to give yourself, okay, I'm not going to open myself up for 6 months. Time time is irrelevant, because you could be dating somebody for 6 months and like, oh, I'm still not attracted. Or you could be with somebody for 6 hours and like, oh my gosh, there's so much chemistry. So you have to use how vulnerable you were able to be with each other emotionally in revealing your darker parts of you, or your wounded inner child parts. So the more you're able to share these vulnerable places within you, the closer you feel to another person. And that should be the determinant of whether or not, of when if and when you get intimate. And then once you decide that, you could also present it as, okay, I love you. I love how we connect intellectually and emotionally. And I would love to explore if we're even sexually compatible.
Right.
So you get one pass to see
Or
if we're
two passes.
compatible, or two passes. And then we have to talk about exclusivity.
Yeah, so think of it as an interview process. I mean, that's really what dating is, right? You're interviewing a future long-term, a candidate as a long-term partner, and it's important to understand all the things about that partner that matter to you. And if sexual intimacy is something that matters, and hopefully it would, I think in a healthy relationship it will. Then that's just another part of the interview process. And there's not a lot of judgment. There shouldn't be a lot of judgment around, oh, I ended up having sex on the third date versus the eighth date or whatever. It's not a question of when anybody else thinks it's appropriate for you to have sex. It's when you have that comfort level and that trust.
Yeah.
And as a part of the interview process, it really is data collection. It may be that you're not sexually compatible, and you can talk about it until you're blue in the face, but actually having the sex is the real litmus test in terms of your compatibility. And can you find the potential for it to be the kind of sexual relationship that you're looking for.
You brought up an interesting point that will probably be debated in our comments, is that you don't have to be exclusive. A lot of people say, go be exclusive, make sure you're in a relationship and don't, give it up. But you're saying really that's part of really knowing whether or not you want to be with this person. Talk to me about that.
Yeah, exactly. And you have to recognize that, particularly the first time, if you would choose this approach. I mean, not everybody would choose this approach, but I think you're right. It might be a little controversial. But if you do choose this approach, what we find that works is to be very clear with your partner about the fact that that this is a part of the interview process, that I'm not exclusive now. And that means, that has implications about protection and other things, of course. And that, I'm using this as a way of collecting information in order to decide whether this is the long-term relationship that I want.
Yeah. And you mentioned give it up. Okay, so what's the definition of give it up? Is it penetrative sex? There's a way of collecting data with a woman can give the boundary of, we could do whatever, but we're going to stop at penetrative sex.
Mm-hmm.
There will be enough data collected outside of penetrative sex for us to know whether or not our energies are compatible. So that is one way of feeling like it's a quote unquote cleaner or whatever. Maybe not giving it up all the way. That's an option.
Yeah, and it could stop anywhere, right? It could just be kissing. It could be, whatever you want to call second base or third base. You can establish that boundary at any point that's comfortable for you. But the point is that you're really in an interview process, and that it's important not to get too far ahead of yourself and imagine that this is going to be the perfect relationship before you have all the data, before you have collected all the information that's relevant to what's really important to you.
And then you could say, okay, now that I collected the data that we're at least somewhat compatible, yes, of course it can be improved, but he's not so far off from where I am. All right,
she's not so far off.
Right, exactly. Or you could say like, okay, now I need more data around other things. I need to go out on more dates with this guy because I need to understand other aspects of his personality. So this way it helps you to remain detached, and then you can make decisions from the right place.
I love the way you guys are explaining this, the data collection, and we're interviewing. And I'm not sure that you're actually suggesting to use that terminology. Maybe some people, I could never use that.
Maybe not use it, although I think we actually did in our dating process.
Yeah,
I mean, we literally...
Well, you guys are so far ahead with all this. I think that what's important, though, about it is that essentially is what you're doing. And recognize that, whether you want to actually use those words or not. It's an interview process to determine. Yeah.
You're the HR director of your love life. You're interviewing candidates.
Yeah.
And that's essentially what it is. So in the divorced women after 50, whom I individually coach to try to date better, I I repeatedly like tell them this is an interview process. Do not get attached because he drives a fancy car, he has a nice house, looks like he makes boatloads of money. No,
Yeah.
that's all frosting. You got to see if he treats you well
Yeah,
and
how
all of
you
these.
feel and whether this is the relationship that's right for
Yeah.
you.
We have about 3 minutes left or so, and I think one part that that I know that we've talked about before, I'd like you to close with that, is that knowing what you like is a huge part of feeling confident sexually.
Right. Yeah. If you've been out of the game and you literally haven't had sex maybe in 10 years or in a year or whatever, and you're feeling a little bit uncertain or hesitant about getting into a sexual relationship, then there's some ideas that we could share that may be helpful in terms of helping you feel more confident about entering into that. And the first one is really about reviving your own body's pleasure response and making sure that you sort of remember what feels good to you, how you like to be touched, the things that really sort of turn you on sensually and sexually. And sort of practice that and get refamiliarize yourself with that, so you're updated in terms of what to expect from your own body's response as you enter into that kind of sexual activity with a partner.
And I think if you can share, like, okay, you're the first person I'm being intimate with after being with someone for 30 years. I mean, as a
That's
guy,
intimacy
would
in
you?
itself, right?
Yeah,
I mean,
would you
okay,
even be
great.
turned off?
No, not at all. It's like,
No.
great, let's do this.
Let me guide you. Let me
Yeah.
help you. I've been divorced a lot longer, and let me see where we go with this. So that also gives the opportunity for the guy to be a leader in the bedroom. And
Right.
most guys want to lead.
It's the same
in the
thing
bedroom,
about the
right?
innocent comment earlier. It's an opportunity to take the lead, and I think most guys like to take the lead. So this is an opportunity. Let me hold you by the hand. I'm going to respect everything about the boundaries we've established. I'm going to communicate constantly and ask for feedback. But this is an adventure that I think we're both going to enjoy.
Yeah. So for the purposes of this segment, and like a big takeaway really is, and in response to the women that have asked about this, is that, Jim, I'll direct it to you first, is that men don't expect, or maybe not even want, some experienced porn star in bed.
There's certainly no expectation of a porn star kind of experience in bed. I'm not sure about not wanting that. It's just unrealistic to expect that, if that makes sense. And it's exciting, as I said, it's exciting to think about a woman who really is open and eager, and taking her by the hand and leading that process. That's really exciting.
So it's really about being open and willing to explore. That is what turns you on and will help you both get where you need to be.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I think that openness makes all the difference. That's the attractiveness.
The more you can share your vulnerabilities about where you are and that you haven't been intimate in so many years, then that prevents the man from making up stories like, oh my gosh, she's a cold fish. And if he doesn't even know where that's coming from, he's going to just say, oh, she's not for me. And so women should not be afraid to really share the truth. The radical honesty always saves the day.
Yep.
Spoken from an open heart.
Well, lots to think about here. Is there anything else that you want to add on this topic before we close?
We would just love to hear the comments from the viewers to see what they think about, especially the women, what they think about the process of going into dating as data collection instead of trying to hook onto, oh, he's a rich man or he's a hot guy. Collect data.
Yeah, I'd like to hear the men's view on this as well. So yeah, we love to respond to those comments and appreciate any insights that you might want to offer or questions that you might have for us.
Well, we will link, of course, to all of your information. I love it when you guys chime in on the comments, that and I think our viewers do too. And I look forward to having you back soon on Second Act TV.
Yeah, we look forward to that too, Silke. Thank you.
Thanks for watching. If you haven't already done so, please be sure to subscribe to our channel. And if there's a topic that you'd like to have us cover, visit our website, secondact.tv. We have a little red suggestion box in the upper right-hand corner of our site. Just click on that, drop us a line. We'd love to hear from you. See you next time.